You use every sense to its full potential, I think. Certainly with the lighting, also with the sound that you have on there, with the various music that you pick, it really changes the scenery to the point where you can have a scene where nobody says anything, but there's constantly things going off in your brain about what you should be feeling about this. Where did you get that from? And can you give us maybe an idea for, what your approach is and how you kind of arrive at your sensibilities for blending all that together?
To be honest with you, I've always been influenced, and this is another great experience, a wonderful memory that I have with my father, who passed right before the film completed, which was really hard to take, because this was the one film that I really, really wanted him to see. He was always so supportive. But not to digress, my father and I spent so much time watching noir films growing up. And, the one thing that had always struck me is just, the lighting and the music and the tension that could be created over something as simple as you mentioned, a guy sitting there reflecting back and sorting out his inner demons. And so lighting and sound, and I really wanted it to be a fully immersive experience when you watched the LACHRYMOSE Primrose. I wanted it to be as though the camera was the third person, being the viewer in the room with Caleb and Elizabeth. And obviously I can't objectively say whether or not that worked and conveyed how I intended on the screen, but that was my hope, is that you as the viewer felt like you were stuck in this very claustrophobic home, because we shot in very tight quarters. And so I wanted the movie to have a very claustrophobic type feel, and you were just a voyeur watching this story unfold.
That blew me away too. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I thought that was just amazing. This isn't exactly, it's not a 20-minute short film. It's a 2-hour feature film that you created as a silent film because of necessity. And then you created all this amazing sound behind it. What was that process like? And I don't know, if I don't want you to give away any trade secrets, although for some folks watching, I'm sure, that are filmmakers themselves, I'm sure they want you to. But what was that process like in syncing everything up? Because when you watch the film, especially, and I try to pay attention to this to think, okay, which part of it is going to be, lip sync, like watching a band rock concert or something, where it's all just kind of lip synced or whatever. I couldn't tell. Everything was seamless.
Oh, wonderful. I tell you what, it was, and I may be masochistic for saying this, as much as I love, the pre-production and the actual production process, post is my absolute favorite, because you really have the ability to play with so much. And for the other filmmakers watching, they know this. And sometimes there are certain things that you can change just by adding a certain sound or sound effect in a scene, and it changes the entire tone. And so for me, as much as we had the scenes lit and so forth, but for me in post-production, working with the Foley effects, adding the music, doing the color grading, oh man, that's because you're watching everything come to life. I find that to be the biggest thrill for me as a filmmaker.
It's so cool to be able to sculpt it any way you need to.
Exactly. And a lot of the cuts for the film are based on the music that was used also. So an insider who had a chance to watch the next to the last rough cut said to me that one of the scenes was just so spot on with the music that was going on. And they inquired as to how that fit. And I said, I knew in advance what the piece of music was going to be for that scene. And so it made it really easy in the editing room when I cut that scene together. Every cut shot falls on a certain beat. There's a lot. I've spent my entire life before film being in bands and being a musician. So there's a wonderful marriage between the two, and things that I'm able to bring to the table as a musician, and everything. I know I mentioned cadence before, but the cadence of everything. And when Caleb looks a certain way, just as a certain beat hits with the music, That's not coincidence. Everything's timed out and mapped out accordingly. So it's a lot of fun.